Power isn't given, it's taken, owned, and carried with grace. In a world that too often questions who gets to lead, what happens when a woman refuses to lower her gaze? Let us know in the comments section below. Officer Brent Wallace adjusted his sunglasses in the side mirror of his patrol SUV. He didn't just wear the badge, he was the badge. That's how he saw it. He believed in control, and the moment people stopped fearing you, you lost it. That's what his father taught him. That's what his academy commander drilled into him. And Brent, he absorbed every word like gospel. He sat up straighter in his seat as a black luxury sedan rolled slowly into the Chevron parking lot on the corner of Canyon and Fifth. It was polished, clean, expensive. But what caught his eye was who stepped out of it. A black woman, late 30s, maybe early 40s, confident stride, athletic frame. She was wearing sweatpants and a long-sleeved workout hoodie, but something about her posture screamed authority. Brent clicked his pen. His jaw tensed. He didn't know her name, not yet, but he knew the type. He'd seen it before. Black folk with money walking around like the world owed them a round of applause. Especially women like her, the way she held her head up high, like she didn't have to earn respect, like it was just supposed to be given. Hayworth had made his palms itch. He slid out of the SUV slowly, making sure the snap of his holster was loud enough to be heard. A tactic, a warning. He walked toward her with a casual menace in his step. The woman had just inserted her card into the gas pump. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, voice level but lined with ice. She looked at him, calm, unreadable. "Yes, officer?" "You own this vehicle?" His eyes traveled across the sedan's spotless body. "We've had some reports of a car matching this description being involved in a robbery nearby." She blinked slowly. "Is that so?" Brent felt something hot coil inside him. That tone, that calmness, like she wasn't rattled, like she'd done this before. "License and registration," he demanded, stepping closer. "And I'll need to see some ID." Whitney Beddington didn't flinch. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick leather wallet, flipping it open with deliberate precision. There it was, the gold trim of a military identification card. "General Whitney Beddington, United States Army. That's my name. That's my car." For a moment, Brent's expression didn't change. Then he snorted, like she'd just played a trick on him. "Military ID doesn't exempt you from an investigation." "Are you investigating or profiling?" she asked. The words weren't loud, they weren't hostile, but they cut. Gas station attendants inside were starting to stare through the window. A teenager across the street paused his bike mid-ride. A young woman in yoga pants fumbled for her phone. Brent felt the air shift. He was losing control of the scene. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to place your hands on the hood of the vehicle," he said, now sharp and rigid. "We can resolve this at the station." "You're arresting me?" "You're being detained for pumping gas, for matching the description of a suspect. Now, step away from the vehicle." Whitney didn't move. Her eyes remained locked on his. "You're making a mistake," she said. Not a threat, not even a warning. Just a truth. He grabbed her wrist, and that was when a voice rang out. "Yo, what are you doing? That's General Beddington." It was the teenager on the bike. He'd dropped his handlebars and was filming. "I follow her on Instagram, dude. She spoke at my brother's graduation last year." "That's a general. What's wrong with you?" Brent's grip froze. His heart thudded once, twice. Inside the station, the cashier had picked up her phone. Across the street, the woman with the yoga pants was live streaming. Whitney stood still, her hands relaxed. She wasn't afraid, she was furious. "Do you want to finish this here?" she said. "Or should I make a call to your precinct?" Brent's mouth opened, but before he could speak, another cruiser rolled up. Deputy Carlos Hayes stepped out, removing his shades. "Brett, what's going on?" "She's a suspect." Carlos glanced at Whitney, and then everything changed. His face went pale, his posture straightened, like he was standing for inspection. "General Beddington?" he asked. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "I was," she said flatly, "until I stopped to get gas." Brent's mouth went dry. "You know her?" Carlos turned to him, furious. "Are you out of your mind? She's on the cover of the National Defense Review. She commands joint operations in Africa. You just put hands on a sitting army general." No one was blinking. The teenager's camera was still rolling. The woman live streaming gasped. "Oh my God, he really tried to arrest her." Archley didn't move. Her calm hadn't cracked, but Brent was crumbling from the inside. Carlos stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I'll take it from here." "No," she said, her voice firm. "He's going to apologize, not just to me, to every young person watching this right now." Brent's lips parted, then closed again. Around him, the buzz of phones and low murmurs grew into a storm of shame. And Whitney? She just stood there, chest lifted, gaze steady, holding the weight of a uniform that could not protect her from judgment, but did protect her from surrender. And somewhere inside him, Brent Wallace knew the badge he wore had just gotten heavier than he'd ever imagined. Brent Wallace stood by his cruiser with the sun burning into his collar, but the sweat running down his back wasn't from the heat. He watched as Deputy Hayes walked General Whitney Beddington toward her car, both of them speaking quietly, formally. The teen's phone was still up. The girl live streaming hadn't budged, and Brent felt like the whole damn world was watching him breathe. He wanted to protest, wanted to say something, wanted to rewrite it all, but his voice stayed tucked behind the dry edges of his teeth. Hayes walked back over. His boots kicked up grit, his jaw clenched so hard Brent could hear it pop. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Hayes asked, voice low but hot enough to sear. "I was doing my job." "You weren't doing your job. You were playing cop and cowboy." "That's a general, Brent." "She was out of uniform, dressed like a civilian, driving an expensive car." Hayes took a step closer. "Stop, just stop. You're not helping yourself." Brent looked away. His hand flexed at his side like it was trying to remember what authority felt like. "You're going to get hit with a suspension if this thing keeps blowing up. That kid's video's already on Twitter. I've seen it on 2 feeds in 5 minutes. Brent swallowed hard. She baited me. She knew what she was doing. Flashing her ID like I'm supposed to just back down? That's not how protocol works." "You touched her, Brent," Hayes hissed. "You laid hands on a superior officer in front of civilians, in a public space, with no probable cause, after she identified herself. You think that looks like protocol to anybody?" Inside the gas station, the cashier was now talking on the phone behind the counter, casting glances every few seconds toward the window. "You don't even get it, do you?" Hayes added. "She's not just some name on a badge. Whitney Beddington's the real deal. Tours in Iraq, NATO security briefings, medal presentations at the Pentagon. She's testified before the Senate on counterterrorism. And you," he pointed, eyes blazing, "you tried to cuff her at a Chevron." Brent didn't answer. Because what could he say? He turned back to his cruiser, hoping to disappear into paperwork, radio chatter, anything that felt routine. But there was no routine now. The normal world had cracked open, and he was falling through. Across the lot, Whitney was finishing her gas fill-up like nothing had happened. Calm, exact. Like decades of pressure had taught her that showing any crack gave people like him permission. She didn't look back. Not once. Lactic acid and Spaldor invited her closer. Hayes waited by his car until she pulled out of the lot. Only when the black sedan disappeared behind a line of trucks did he turn back to Brent. "Chief's gonna want a full report," he said. "I suggest you write it real careful." Then he got in his cruiser and drove off without another word. Brent stood there in the settling quiet, listening to the buzz of a fly on his windshield and the distant sound of someone's ringtone playing a country song. 2 hours later, the internal memo came in. He was to report to HQ by 4 p.m. No uniform necessary. That sentence echoed longer than it should have. When he arrived at the precinct, Chief Ruddock was already waiting. Her expression was unreadable, the kind that said she wasn't just angry, she was done. She motioned him inside her office. No small talk, no coffee offer, just cold air and silence, and the weight of judgment. Brent obeyed. She dropped a printed screenshot on the table between them, the thumbnail of the video, Whitney standing tall, his own hand gripping her wrist. He looked away. "You're not being charged yet," she said, "but there's an inquiry, independent review, civilian panel." He nodded. Hollow. "Good, Brent." She leaned forward. "This isn't your first complaint. This is just the first one. We can't bury. We've covered for you before, too many times." "I thought she was a suspect." "No, you assumed she was one. You saw a black woman in an expensive car and decided she didn't belong. That's not policing. That's profiling." He tried to interject. She raised her hand sharply. "You're on paid leave pending the investigation. I don't want to see you near a cruiser, a badge, or a street corner unless you're shopping for groceries. Do I make myself clear?" Brent's lips parted, but no sound came. "Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Chief." Visha stood. Meeting over. Brent walked out of the building with his keys heavy in his pocket. The lobby TV was playing the noon news. His face was on it. The headline beneath his photo read, "Black U.S. General Detained." Was it racial profiling? They hadn't even blurred his badge number. Outside, the sun had dipped. Shadows stretched long and wide across the asphalt. Whitney Beddington was probably halfway across the city by now, maybe prepping for some briefing, maybe walking into a school to give a talk, maybe home with her sister, cracking open a bottle of wine and laughing about the absurdity of it all. But she hadn't looked shaken, not once. And that, more than anything, unmoored him. He had wanted to scare her. Not hurt her. No, not that. Just remind her who held power, who had the authority. But she hadn't budged, because she'd seen real war. She'd led soldiers into battles where people actually died. What was one more uniform with a fragile ego to a woman who'd survived sniper fire and Senate hearings? Brent sat in his truck outside the precinct and stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. He didn't look like the man who had joined the force 10 years ago. He looked tired, faded, like a photograph left too long in the sun. At home, the silence greeted him first. The living room TV lit up the walls with news reruns. The video again. The angle was clearer now. You could see the exact second his fingers wrapped around her arm, the way her shoulders squared, unshaken. And for the first time, Brent Wallace realized that authority wasn't about fear. It was about presence. And Whitney Beddington had more of it in one quiet stare than he'd ever managed in 100 traffic stops. He turned off the TV, sat in the dark, and wondered what kind of man he really was when the badge was gone. Whitney Beddington didn't go home that night. Home felt too small, too quiet, and she couldn't sit in stillness when the echo of what happened at the gas station was bouncing across every social feed, news outlet, and group chat in the country. Her inbox was overflowing. Friends from the Army, journalists she hadn't spoken to in years, civil rights advocates, former cadets, some angry, some inspired, all of them wanting to know, what was she going to do? She parked on a quiet overlook above the city, her phone dimmed, her mind loud. This wasn't the first time. That's what people didn't understand. You didn't make it to her rank, not as a black woman, not in the U.S. Army, without being questioned, undermined, second-guessed. But this This was different. It was public. It was brutal. And it struck at something she thought she'd armored over a long time ago. She didn't cry. Not because she wasn't angry, not because it didn't hurt, but because she had learned a long time ago that tears gave people like Officer Wallace something they didn't deserve. Proof. They'd broken you. Her fingers drummed on the steering wheel as her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a name she hadn't seen in months. Monique, sis. She let it ring once, twice, then picked up. You okay? Monique's voice was soft, careful, like she was trying not to trigger a detonation. And fine. No. Whitney stared out at the lights below. I'm angry, but that's not new. There was a pause. You want me to come over? I'm not home. You want to talk about it? No, Whitney said, then softer. The line held steady, filled with breath and love and the kind of silence only sisters could share. He didn't even blink, Whitney said finally. Not when I showed him my ID, not when I told him who I was. He saw my skin and stopped seeing everything else. Some people don't want to see, Monique said, because if they do, they'd have to change. Whitney closed her eyes. I should have done more, she muttered. I should have said more. I should have... You were calm. You were powerful. I didn't feel powerful. I felt like a target. There it was. The truth. Monique didn't argue. Come home, Whit. Let yourself be soft for once. Whitney didn't respond. She stared at her own reflection in the rearview mirror, the same eyes that had stared down Taliban commanders and Pentagon brass, and for the first time in years, they looked tired. She hung up gently, promised she'd come by in the morning, then let the silence return. But the silence didn't last. The Army's public affairs officer, Captain Renee Miller, called next. Ma'am, she said crisply, there's a press conference request from 4 major outlets. CNN, MSNBC, a local affiliate, and The Root. They're all asking if you'd like to make a statement. No, Whitney said, not yet. You sure? This thing's catching fire. You've got public support across both sides of the aisle, social media's lit up, and... No, Renee, she said again, firm this time. I'm not doing this to boost headlines. If I speak, it won't be about me. Captain Miller paused. Understood. Whitney ended the call and finally started the car. The next morning, she didn't stop at her sister's. She drove straight to City Hall, and not the front entrance. She walked through the side lot, past security, into a side conference room where she knew the Civilian Oversight Board was holding its emergency session. The panelists, city council members, attorneys, and one retired judge were already seated when she entered. One of them stood halfway. General Beddington. I'm not here in uniform, Whitney said. I'm here as a citizen, and I'd like 5 minutes to speak. The retired judge, a tall, older black man named Frederick Mays, gave a small nod. Recall? Granted. She stepped forward. No podium, no notes, just presence. You've seen the video, she began. You've read the articles, you've seen the hashtags and the headlines, but what I'm going to tell you now is something I've never said in a press briefing or a military memo. She paused. My father wore a badge. For 25 years, he walked a beat and raised 2 daughters to believe in the dignity of the law. He told us the badge meant service, not superiority, that power was meant to protect, not provoke. The room was still. When I was detained by Officer Brent Wallace, I was not in uniform. I was not escorted. I was not surrounded by my rank or my medals. I was just another black woman trying to pump gas. Her voice didn't waver. And that man didn't see me. He saw a threat. He saw a stereotype. He saw an excuse to flex power. A few heads lowered, not in shame, but in sorrow. But this isn't about one man, Whitney continued. It's about a culture, one that rewards fear instead of understanding, that treats brown skin as probable cause, that mistakes ego for enforcement. He half anticipated. Her breath caught just once, but she steadied. Nathan, I'm not pressing charges. That's not what this is. What I want is accountability, transparency, reform. And I want this city to understand, rank didn't save me. My restraint did. The room held its breath. I won't be your symbol, she finished, but I will be your mirror. Look hard and decide what kind of city you want to be. She stepped back. No applause, no cameras, just silence, and the weight of truth settling into the bones of everyone who heard it. Hours later, Officer Brent Wallace watched that clip from his couch. No dramatic lighting, no dramatic music, just a screen, and her face, and the way his stomach turned inside out. He hadn't been called back to duty. In fact, Internal Affairs had requested his body cam footage, something he'd forgotten about entirely in the chaos. His wife had gone to her sister's. She didn't say why, but he knew. The phone was ringing, but he didn't move to answer it. He just watched Whitney speak again and again, until the words weren't just about her anymore. They were about him, and he didn't like what they said. 2 weeks later, the sky above the city held the kind of gentle calm Whitney Beddington hadn't felt in days, maybe longer. The media storm had reached its peak and was now starting to settle, leaving behind the dust of policy discussions, public statements, and uncomfortable truths. But something had changed. It wasn't just awareness, it was momentum. Whitney stood on the stage of Dunbar Community Center, a place she used to volunteer at, back before the stars adorned her shoulders. Today there was no military dress, no medals pinned to her chest. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a simple navy blouse. And yet, as she stood before the gathered crowd, children, veterans, college students, and neighbors, she felt more in command than she ever had in uniform. Behind her, a banner read, "Courage in Civility, a town hall on trust and reform." She wasn't the keynote speaker. That honor had been given to someone else. Deputy Carlos Hayes stepped up to the podium beside her, cleared his throat, and looked out at the room. "I've been a cop for 17 years, he began. "But in the last 2 weeks, I've learned more about the weight of this badge than in all the years before." He glanced at Whitney, nodded slightly. "There's a difference between power and responsibility, and that difference was made clear by what happened at a Chevron gas station on a Tuesday afternoon." He looked down for a moment, collecting himself. General Beddington could have demanded justice in the way most people do when they're wronged, with lawsuits, with press conferences, with force. But she didn't. She walked into a civilian boardroom and chose to speak as one of us. That made me question who I was behind the badge. Whitney watched his hands, how they didn't shake, but held tightly to the edge of the podium, like he was anchoring himself to honesty. Hayes continued, "We don't need heroes in uniform. We need listeners in uniform. And if we're going to fix what's broken between cops and communities, it starts here, with humility, with accountability, and with the kind of grace General Beddington showed even when she didn't have to." The room was still. Then came applause, not wild, not orchestrated, just honest. Later, in the hallway outside the center, Whitney leaned against the wall as Carlos approached. "No," she said, "you should have gone into politics." He chuckled. "I'm just a cop who finally started listening." They smiled at each other, quiet and respectful. "I meant what I said," he added. "What you did. Change things." Whitney shrugged. "Not enough. Change always starts small," he said, "but it's a start." He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. She opened it. A draft policy proposal from the precinct. New training curriculum, community liaisons, revised use of force review boards. Her eyes moved across the lines, slowly, mouth tightening with cautious hope. "They're really doing it?" she asked. Carlos nodded. "They are now." Before she could respond, a small voice from behind interrupted them. "Excuse me, General Beddington." They turned. It was the teenager from the gas station, the one with the phone camera. He looked nervous now, not like the firebrand who'd called out Brent Wallace in real time. A little taller, maybe. Definitely more self-aware. "Hey," Whitney said, softening. "I remember you." "I'm Marcus," he said, holding out a hand. She shook it. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said. "You didn't freak out, you didn't yell, you stayed calm. I've never seen anyone do that before. It stuck with me." Whitney tilted her head. "That camera phone of yours, it changed a lot." He blushed. "I was just trying to help. My mom told me if you see something, say something. I just added a hashtag." She laughed, genuinely. "You do more than you think, Marcus." He shifted awkwardly, pulled out a small notebook from his pocket. "I'm writing about it for school. My teacher says I should think about journalism." "You should," she said. "You already changed the story once. Keep doing it." He beamed, gave a quick nod, and jogged off. Carlos smiled. "That kid's going to be dangerous with a pen." Whitney watched him go. "Good." They stood there for a moment longer, until Carlos finally said, "You never did press charges." "I didn't need to," she replied. "The world watched. That was enough." He nodded again. "Brent Wallace is officially off the force." She didn't react. Didn't gloat. Just said, "I hope he learns something from it. He's in counseling, required before any reinstatement, but I doubt he's coming back." Whitney looked up at the sky, a slow breath escaping her. "Had left that chapter's closed then?" Carlos asked. "So what now?" Whitney thought about it for a moment, the kind of question that didn't need a fast answer. Then she turned to him. "I'm starting a program," she said. "Veterans who've served will partner with local precincts, ride-alongs, community events, conflict resolution. If we can handle insurgents abroad, we can teach empathy at home." Carlos's brows rose. "You serious?" "I already got the funding." He grinned. "Where do I sign up?" She smiled back. "You already did, the day you stepped between me and that man." That evening, Whitney finally went home. Her sister, Monique, was waiting on the porch, 2 glasses of red wine in hand. Whitney sank into the chair beside her and took the glass. "You really shook the world," Monique said. "I didn't shake it," Whitney said. "I just reminded it to look in the mirror." They clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long time, Whitney Beddington let herself feel what she always denied. Not just peace, not just strength, but something gentler, something rarer. A sense that even in a broken system, even after humiliation, truth could win. Not loudly, not quickly, but honestly. And this time, it had.